All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Here's Johnny.
Vanity. Definitely my favorite sin.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
The power of Christ compels you.
This is my boomstick.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Hello, horror heads, and welcome to Shiver, a horror movie podcast. We are your host. I'm Daniel DeBona.
And I'm David Ulloa.
And we are joined this week by, I want to say a long-time listener, but I know he just recently started listening. However, he may have listened to more episodes than just about anybody else in a record amount of time. So friend of the show, personal friend of mine, former co-host of the What You Got show with me on YouTube. Everybody, this is Nick Hardy. How you doing, Nick?
Doing outstanding. Glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
Nick has been chomping for a chance to get on the show ever since he started listening. I've known Nick a good time, and Nick is a big horror movie guy. We've done, back when we worked at the bar together, we've done horror movie trivia a couple times together. And so definitely a guy that I'm happy to have on. And Nick, I'm sure you know from listening to a couple episodes, whenever we have somebody on for the first time, we like to know what got you into horror. Like, what's the first movie that you really remember thinking, like, yeah, this is something for me?
So the first movie I ever saw was Chucky. That's the one I pitched to originally come on.
Which one?
That one. Child's Play. The original, yeah. And it terrified me and almost ruined me for life for horror. And then I was introduced to a movie called Evil Dead.
Oh, yeah.
And that brought me full circle back around. And ever since then, I've been a huge fan. Scary movies, horror, everything. So
Evil Dead, a good one. Like, did you listen to our Evil Dead episode and hear my story about how I was watching it thinking I'd seen it before?
Yes, I did.
Yes. So Evil Dead 2 hopefully coming back around this summer, but we've got more on that later in the episode. So this week, what we've decided to do is wrap up our month of movies that are new to both of us. And we went foreign this week with it's called a Netflix original, but it's just one of those ones Netflix kind of bought up while it was out there. And this movie is called The Platform. This was released on Netflix just a couple years ago. A lot of reviews that are kind of all over the place with this one. So just kind of as we get started, we've definitely had some movies that qualify as pleasantly surprised. I think for me, the big one last week was Fresh. Like, I just was not expecting to like Fresh as much as I did. But so when you look at this one, does The Platform still follow suit for you? We'll start with you, Nick. Like, with being new to the show, were you pleasantly surprised with The Platform?
Well, yes. Okay, so I originally saw it when it was released on Netflix during the whole quarantine thing. While everybody else was enthralled with Tiger King, I was, watching random movies and avoiding Tiger King like the plague. But
get it, you're cool. I didn't watch Tiger King.
I watched this movie and then was immediately just enamored with it. And I probably watched it 4 or 5 times after it came out within the first month of just being locked in my house.
Nice. Yeah, like there was definitely a fervor to you seeing it on my Instagram story and asking to be on this episode. So I had a feeling. Yeah. What about you, Dave? Does this one still follow suit with pleasantly surprised for you?
So I liked it. I definitely didn't dislike it. But I wasn't pleasantly surprised. No.
Okay.
I think that this is a movie that is a good movie. It's a good watch. If someone asked me a month from now, hey, you want to watch The Platform? I'd probably say, yeah, sure. But I'd throw out another suggestion or two before. Like, what about this movie? So I do like it. I think it starts off really strong and then kind of loses. It's whenever horror has a message, it's a good thing, I think, because a movie rises above just your standard, a gore fest. but it's got to deliver on that message. And I think that message kind of gets lost somewhere there, in that, late in the second act, early in the third act, it kind of loses its way and then kind of, just falters. So I don't think it stuck the landing, but I think overall it is a fun ride. So pleasantly surprised, no. Surprised, no. Pleasant, no. But it was a movie, and
fair. So
yeah.
I'm kind of with you on that. Like the what I kind of equate this movie to, I was pleasantly surprised. I did really enjoy it, but I think that you're definitely onto something with it faltering there at the very end and not delivering. But when we get to talking about the message, I do think that there's a reason for that, and I'll get to that. But I think that what we get here is, this is a vault run in gymnastics that sets into the air with, like a 10.0 difficulty, and unfortunately just doesn't stick the landing. Right. We get all the flair of the flips, the twists, the turns, but when it comes time to bring it home and drive it and cement the fact that you are delivering something, that's where this movie kind of lost it. It's like watching a bottle rocket go up into the air and then it never, and so I will say, like I said, I was definitely pleasantly surprised. I was surprised in the fact that I don't know. This is another one. I really didn't know what to expect. And so I was surprised in this idea that there was, a message to it, that it was more driven than just a survival horror, which is kind of what I thought it was going to be. I thought that it was really just going to boil down to this concept of a bunch of prisoners trying to survive. So again, much like with Fresh, I was pleasantly surprised because the way I had storyboarded this movie based on catching a glimpse of the trailer was not exactly how it played out, and there was more to it. So I was pleasantly surprised. What about when you're looking at standout qualities of the movie, Nick? Like either good or bad, what stood out for you?
Well, there's a bunch of fun things that happen in this movie. The special effects are outstanding in some of the kills. The platform. So when I originally watched it, I didn't really think about a whole lot of technical aspects. But rewatching it for this podcast, I started thinking about it, and I was like, man, that platform is just floating. What are the physics behind that? And I'm like, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. The story itself does get lost towards the end, it seems like. But I just enjoy this whole movie.
Okay.
I think it's great. The acting is outstanding. The set design is incredible. I read an article from the director. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name because it's all French or whatever. And
Spanish.
Yeah, Spanish. All the Spanish people in there, I'm just going to butcher their names if I try. But
let me see. I'll take a run at it. Gardel Gastelu Urrutia.
Yeah. See, like guy. you have to be like a naturally born like Hispanic Latin speaker to even approach that one. Like as much as I can do with the Spanish language, pronouncing that guy's name was never going to happen for me.
Yeah. that is a tough one, even for like a native Spanish speaker.
It's like I can do Guillermo del Toro,
Gastelu Urrutia. Gastelu Urrutia.
Yeah.
Fuck. Can you imagine being that guy in like kindergarten and you walk in and there's like, Mrs. Gonzalez or whatever. And she's like, who are you? And then you got to fucking say that. Shit.
And then you have to try to get her to pronounce it while you're there.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And you're not even sure.
Yeah.
What about you, Dave, when you're looking at standout qualities?
So I think that, this movie like revels in its simplicity, and the set design is like so minimalistic, but it works. It really, really works. And I think that the direction is great and the acting was great. The voiceover sucks. It's an absolutely atrocious voiceover. If you do understand Spanish and you watch it in Spanish, you get a lot more out of this. And the actors are fantastic, I will say that. So every problem I had with this movie, it does not come from the technical side. I mean, technically, this is a really well-made movie. I kind of feel similarly to how I felt with We Have to Do Something.
Yeah.
Where it was really well made, but like the message is kind of lost. And I don't think that this kind of goes that far down that rabbit hole as We Have to Do Something did. I always use that as like my litmus test.
Like that's the one. And I'm always like, God damn, like this dude's gonna keep shitting on the first one I ever just straight up picked. Like that's just his gimmick now.
To be fair, the trailer is why you picked it.
Yeah.
And they know how to cut a trailer.
They do. They do. What a fantastic trailer.
Yeah.
But a technical aspect. I mean, this movie's really well made. I can't knock any of that stuff.
I 100% agree with that. And looking back at, again, the same idea of, I think we should do something. The idea of shooting something in a very limited space, especially in this case, a very limited monochromatic space. Mm-hmm. It's one thing that they did geniusly with this movie was not only was just everything just this one real specific color palette, except for the food as it broke down, which was just so smart to have this one vibrant bit in the platform of the food that was coming down, but also to have it constantly on the backdrop of everything being so gray. And then as it goes down, as you lose color, people are losing hope as there's less and less food on there. But also I like the filter, like the gel that it was kind of shot through that just made sure that everything had that real, dim matte finish. Like nothing shined in this movie, like except for the plates until you got to a certain point when then they were dirty and stuff like that. So I agree 100% that technically this was really well done. I think that Nick had an awesome point, and the standout of the limited practical effects that we got were dope. Like we got some really great practical effects, even if they were just real short bursts, like towards the end when they're riding the platform down and we just get like the montage of them having to fight people off the platform. We got some really good short burst special effects of people taking rods to the head when the dude gets cut open with the katana and they get in close on his wound. We get some really cool special effects there. Like
I believe that guy actually got shit on. That's a real good
I think that was legitimate.
That was Duke. But yeah, I mean, it was just I think that you're right. Like nothing about this movie that is a negative is going to come from the technical aspects. I think that all of the actors put in work. I think that the way that they presented everything was done very well. And like I said, man, I was just in my head for some reason, not that this movie wasn't gory, but in my head, it was going to be like bigger bursts of gore. Again, I'd already had this idea in my head that like cannibalism was not just going to be like a subplot, that it was going to be like the plot. Yeah. And so, but when we did get it, like that gore was, that was a gore on a lot higher level than what we've gotten in the past couple movies we've done. And the last one, cannibalism was the plot. So
when he's eating that meat off of Trimagasi and it's like maggots crawling in it.
Oh yes. And he's just like peeling
feast on my
pieces
flesh
off. Yes.
Yum.
And he's like, you're not even real.
So we talked in a general sense. The premise, I think, which we just touched upon right now, it's a good segue. I don't think that this is like a new thing. This is definitely, water that's been tread before, but it is treaded a new way, I think, right? Very similar to how I guess Snowpiercer did this horizontally. The platform does it vertically,
right?
And it does it in an interesting way. So, how does the premise and the plot work for you in delivering like a total movie watching experience? And Nick is our guest. I'll default to you as well.
All right. Well, I think it's interesting the outlook that people have when you first get introduced to Trimagasi. He's just like, screw the people above me, screw the people below me. I'm just here for me. They all suck, right? He's like, he basically curses everybody, and it doesn't matter, what level he's on. Everything else is everybody else's fault. And you get that when he's even about to cannibalize Goreng on level 148 or wherever they were at.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just like, this is the fault of the people above us. Mm-hmm. It's not his own fault. And Goreng's even trying to appeal to him. And he's like, hey, I'm going to hold you responsible for this. But Trimagasi doesn't even care because he no longer has a soul.
Right.
And it's an interesting look at the human condition when you're placed in certain environments, or when you have certain things that are against you that could be your fault or could be somebody else's fault, but people always like to not blame themselves first. Mm-hmm. And that's an interesting take I got out of that whole scenario.
I think that you really drove something home there right at the end, when what you're looking at here is what we get is an exploration into the idea of the human condition. Mm-hmm. And, when we talk cast, I'll get a little bit more into that. But I think that when you look at the premise here, and, I would assume that there are kind of multiple ways to kind of come about this. The way that I kind of look at the premise for this, as we talk about message and some stuff about that, is, I think that the premise here is kind of just this scathing look at it's. I guess it's easy to say a scathing look at, capitalism as a political ideal, but I think that it's really, when you start to look at all the characters individually, what we really get is this amazing look at just the idea of political ideals. And so I think that it's presented in a way that it's not ridiculously overbearing. Like we had the talk during the Candyman remake about how it's real easy to get ham-fisted with political messages. Mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. it's definitely there. And I'm sure that you can look at it as kind of being beat over the head with it, but that's not really the feeling I got. I do love one of my favorite things about the premise of this is obviously, the whole, what is it? The VSC, as the authority called it. It's, or the administration, not the authority, the administration. It's a prison because we've got people who are there because of crimes they've committed. But then we also are constantly reminded there are people that chose to be there. Yeah. Which blew me away. Like when we find out that Goreng signed up to go do this,
just to quit smoking.
Yeah, he's like, I wanted to quit smoking. I wanted to read more, and it's like, dude, Don Quixote is a thick read, but 6 months, but and it's like, but so this idea that it's a punitive measure, but it's also been pitched to the people as a self-help program is fascinating to me. We're constantly kind of at odds with this faceless, nameless idea of the administration, which is gorgeously named because that can apply to anybody. If you'd said something that was specific to Spain, then this movie loses some appeal, right? Everybody is fighting against a system, and a system has always got people in place that are making it work. They're in administration. That makes it this great nebulous entity. So I think that it was really smart to name it the administration. And I love this idea of the fact that where you get moved up or down wasn't punitive by any stretch of the imagination. You didn't get moved up because you were great at being at level 102, so you got moved up into the mid 30s. It was all just a mindfuck experiment. Like it was a roll of the dice every month. And so I think that when you look at some little things like that, it took some ideas that could have very quickly fallen into that bear trap of trope and turned them just enough that that it felt fresh, as opposed to just being like, oh, okay, so if you're good and you do the right things, you move up until you get to the top. Some little things like that they messed with, I think, did enough to make this premise feel like something new.
I think that plays directly into the way I read the movie, which is the administrators ultimately don't care from the very beginning, because they're happy to sell you this idea that this prison reforms. And that's something that we're sold here in America, right? That prison is a reform system, and let's say a penal system, right? And I mean, ultimately, when you look at what prison life is actually like, are those measures there? Yes. Do they really hold to them? No. And I think that's what we see there, where it's like, yes, this is reform, right? We've got criminals who have done, who knows what. And then we've also got guys that are criminally insane, right? Because Trimagasi should not be in a prison. He should be in a mental facility. The guy is clearly insane, right?
Because he believed that they were talking directly to him. Like, he was aware it was an infomercial, but still felt it was directed at him.
Right. And that was a beautiful moment, I think, when Goring finally realized that everything that Trimagasi had told him was up in the air. What do you trust? What do you discount when the person who you're talking to is a fucking psychopath, right? And we see the same thing with the woman who volunteers to go in. I forget the name that they give her.
Hemogiri, I believe.
Yeah, the woman who worked there
with the breast cancer.
Yeah.
Right. She goes in there because she's given, just a couple of months to live. And so she's like, well, I guess, I'll live it out here.
Yeah, I can help.
Right. And but she's believing, even though she works there, she believes this idea of what she's been sold by the administrators.
Even she's misinformed.
Right.
Because she thinks there's 200 levels. And they wake up on 202.
Yeah, I mean, that's fucking insane, And she's been told that there are no children here, and yet there is.
Mm-hmm.
So, what exactly is going on in this place? I think that's all part of this great premise, because it's not just that it's a commentary on capitalism, because it is, but it's also a commentary on the human condition, like you said, because I think more than anything else, if we see people behaving a certain way at level 1, right, after they've just been in level 100 or 200, whatever, right, that lets you know this is not so much a commentary on a specific system as it is on the people, right? Because absolute power corrupts, absolutely, right? But at the end of the day, they are still all beneath the people at level 0, who are beneath the administrators, who we never get to see.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really interesting premise. I think that they really do dive into it fairly deeply, and I like it. I like the premise.
Yeah.
We also have a comment here from our number 1 fan, Frank Kowalski. I think it is also about social hierarchy, the top having the best and taking more than what they need at the expense of everyone below them, leading them to suffer. Absolutely.
Yeah. And we're going to get more to just like the message kind of aspect of it here in a little bit. But before we get to that, I think that, we talked about how everything is so minimalistic. We've got these real bland sets. So when we're really looking at what sells this movie, it's the cast. And we don't have a ton of people here. So each and every character that we're looking at has to really count. So how effective do you think everybody was at pulling off what they set off to do? We'll start with you, Dave.
I think the cast is one of the best things about this. Goring is amazing. He was awesome. I bought it hook, line, sinker right from the moment that he's on screen. Trimagasi, I think, is the one who stole the show, however.
Yeah.
Like he was just fucking like he chewed up scenery every time he was on screen, and I was there for it. You know, I could have seen him eat anything. Really,
it's really animalistic way of eating.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, so I think that for me, those were the two standout performances, but it was also like really heartbreaking to see when Imagiri finally understands that this place doesn't work the way she thinks it works, right? You know, it's kind of similar to when someone has an awakening of some sort, whether it's a political awakening, a spiritual awakening, a religious awakening, and they're like, wow, this concept I've been sold, that I bought, doesn't work the way that I wanted it to work, and it doesn't work the way that it was advertised as working. You know, and that's I think it's something that most people can associate with, where they can be like, yeah, you know, I've kind of felt that way at least once before, you know, whether it was about school or about politics or about, you know, my church or even my parents. You know, that moment when you find out that your dad is, you know, just another dude and that he's not in fact Superman. That's a life-changing moment, you know. Unless your dad is Superman, in that case, then, you know, whatever, fuck you, right?
There's that one time that a kid,
there's the one guy
actually Superman. Okay, so just real quick sidebar, something that's real interesting. The way you worded something struck me as something here that I'm going to choose the writers, directors did on purpose. So the way that the way that you phrased it was the disillusionment that comes with finding out something doesn't work is advertised, right? And so there's a really interesting dichotomy right here in the idea of somebody being so bought into something because it's supposed to work. It's a pivotal part of society, the VSC. So you've got this woman who she's worked for it. She believes it works. She eventually finds out it doesn't, and it's very disheartening. The other side of that coin, what's really interesting to that is we're also presented with the idea of a guy who bought something that we as consumers are used to not being worth a shit when he buys his Samurai Plus knife, and turns out that motherfucker stayed sharp. Like it was sharp the entire time. Like it actually did work as advertised. And that's something that we expect to not. So there's a really fun kind of yin and yang of something that's supposed to work, that's very important for it to keep working, like the VSC, and to find out that it doesn't. Whereas something that you're expecting to break at some point, like a knife you bought on an infomercial, and it turns out that's the most resilient thing in the. Oh, you got an Amber Alert.
Sorry.
Down there in Pensacola?
Yeah, it's all good.
And so, you know, or so, like I said, a knife you bought on an infomercial that we're conditioned to believe isn't going to work. That's why they sell them in infomercials. But that's the one thing that does keep working. And when you said doesn't work as advertised, it just made me think of that.
And I think that that's one of the best and worst things about this movie is that it kind of commits to not harping on any one side of an argument. It's like, hey, here's some good and here's some bad, and now here's some bad and here's some good, right? For both sides. So I mean, in the end, I think its commentary is that we're all shit, right?
Right.
And I'm okay with that because I think that kind of jives with my personal beliefs on people who suck. But But yeah, I see that, and it's interesting. I hadn't even thought about that. The guy brought the fucking knife in. The knife fucking works. He's
and
carving into these walls.
Keeps getting
like,
sharper.
Shit, yeah,
and yet still one stab and everybody's going down. I mean, that thing is the golden gun of Infomercial 9.
It really is. Yeah.
All right, so Nick, what did you think about the characters?
I thought
Cast?
I thought Trimagasi did an outstanding job. He played the part well with his animalistic eating, his commentary. He says he's like, "You're not going to eat. Well, you don't deserve this level." So he's viewing people as if they don't fall in line with him, then they're not good enough or whatever.
Right.
And then you have the girl that played Miharu. She didn't say a single thing the whole time, and she was terrifying to me.
Yeah.
She did an outstanding job.
Yeah.
In that role, just in my personal opinion. And then Imagiri, that woman, the way she was like, is this she said something in the interview about is this disturbing to you? And he said no, but it was disturbing to me. Her facial features, the way she was asking the questions, the way she was talking.
That idea that she needed to know if long pauses in conversation bothered him, right?
Yeah,
it's like, that's a weird thing to need to know.
Ivan Masagu, he did a great job just seeming absolutely exhausted. I saw in an interview where with the director where he had to lose 40 pounds over the course of something like 40 pounds over the course of the movie, just so he could fit the part, because they filmed it chronologically. And
well, they would have to if he has to lose that weight.
That's why he looks more and more dilapidated as the movie goes on. And then the way he just looks exhausted at the end of the movie is just incredible to me.
So if you'll bear with me here, cast as / characters is where I think I kind of, I'm not going to claim that I was like super deep with this. I do think a lot of it's surface level, but when I'm looking at the cast, I want to focus more on the characters themselves, because much like Dave said, where this movie doesn't focus so much on point A is good and here's the reason, or point A is bad and here's the reasons why, and point B is good and here's the reasons why. Going back to what we talked about before, I think that this is really a look and a criticism of the a kind of tunnel vision view of a political ideology. So when I look at the cast in this movie, when I look at these characters, what I think we get here are archetypes for much larger ideas. I think that if you look at each character who's given just about any character who's given any sort of like speaking part, what we get is both the good and the bad of subscribing to one particular thing. If we start with Goring, what we've got here is this guy is kind of just the idealist intellectual, right? The guy who thinks that anything and all things can be conquered through knowledge. This is a guy who's willing to give up 6 months of his life to read a book that he's always wanted to read. He's totally against the greed of the people above him, of the fact that Teragasi is throwing at one point he just shatters a wine bottle on the platform, which is going to ruin a good amount of food. He's pissing down the hole straight onto the food. And so he's constantly shaming this guy for doing these things, and he doesn't understand why, because to him none of these things make sense, because he's only approaching things from this intellectual level of why would you do these things if they don't make sense. And so because he's just started, right? This is that kid who goes to college for the first time, and they're like, yes, higher learning, right? This is my ticket to the future. And And then they get there and they find out that there's all sorts of people in college, and some of them don't give a shit about learning and stuff like that. So you start there with him. You move to Tremagasi, he embodies this idea of anarchy, right? That there's, like Nick said, there's nothing that matters but me. If I survive, then that's good. And if something goes wrong, that's not my fault. The universe is chaos. Look at all of the terrible things all of these other people are doing. And that's what's driven me to this. Not because I'm crazy, but because the people around me are awful. And I am merely the reaction to the universe's action of creating chaos around me at all time. It's the embodiment of anarchy. He doesn't give a shit about the system. He doesn't, he was never offered a diploma to leave there. He just views this as this is where the universe has led him, because the guy on the TV made him throw his TV out the window and it killed somebody. And this is where the universe has put me. And now I'm going to survive. And if you have to die, if they have to die, if I've just got to be an asshole, then that's how it's going to be.
He even blames the fact that he threw the TV out of the window on them making fun of him through the TV. Right. And then he blames the fact that he killed the guy on the street because he was an illegal immigrant and he shouldn't even have been there.
He shouldn't have even been there, right? So again, this guy he's an anarchist. He views everything as chaos, and he is just, he's just floating through this and bouncing off of things, and wherever he ends up, that's where he ends up. So again, another ideology, this idea of anarchy. And like I said, I might go for a little bit here, guys. So please just interrupt. This one has plagued me all day. I said that Gorg was like this idealist intellectual. When we start to look at Imagiri, what we get here is the willfully ignorant bureaucrat. Right. Mm-hmm. We get somebody who we kind of assume based on her look and her clothes that she at least has money at that point. She says that the administration took care of her. And so she is kind of the embodiment of people who don't believe that anything goes wrong for anyone because nothing goes wrong for them. Right. It's that idea, that word that's constantly overused now, but she became the physical embodiment of privilege. Right? Because she has to learn about these things because she's never experienced any of them. She's so convinced that things aren't that bad that she chooses to spend the end of her life in this hellhole because she just wants to see it work. And so she's like, cool, yep, this is how it works. And I made these 2 plates and I'm going to yell down at these people and they're going to make 2 plates because she's just so convinced that it was. And she has the idea that it could be as terrible in there as it actually was is so foreign to her. Which outside of this movie, it's that idea of people who have grown up in these bubbles. This one won't mean anything to you, Dave, but for one of the first times I get to reference somewhere around here that other people will get. Nice. We have this area. we have this area in Birmingham called Homewood. And Homewood is is that area. It's these people who live in this bubble where everybody's rich, everybody has everything, nothing bad has ever happened to anyone, and it blows their mind to find out that there are people who have tough lives because the toughest decision they've ever had to make is what color the BMW their daddy was going to buy them when they turned 16 was. And so she becomes the embodiment of that particular concept. And she can't even understand why she's presenting a very logical argument to the people below her, and they're not listening. So she's so blown away when it comes down to having to threaten to shit in the food to get the people to listen to her. Like that wasn't something that ever crossed her mind.
I wanted the decision to come from within.
Yes. Yeah. The spontaneous solidarity?
Yeah. Right.
They listen now.
Yeah, exactly. What does she call him? He's the Messiah. The Messiah but he's the Messiah.
Yeah.
And then again, one more character, and I swear I will stop this rant, but this is one of those times where I really felt like I dug into something and I sunk my teeth into it. The concept of this character of Miharu. And so she doesn't ever talk. People don't like her, because she's killed people. They know she's killed people. They know she kills her cellmate. They know she gets off the platform and kills people if they mess with her. She's always there. Imaguri says that Imaguri, says that she's just a crazy person. She came in here alone. She has no kids. She has no family. She's just, I believe the exact thing she said was she's just some bitch that wanted to be Marilyn Monroe with the ukulele.
The Asian Marilyn Monroe.
Yes, the Asian Marilyn Monroe, right?
She presents that in such a racist way. She's like this
Yes.
slant-eyed bitch that just wants to be Asian Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, she's like all in on it. But, not that it makes it defendable to be a racist.
Casual racism was something that we saw throughout the film.
Especially with Trimagasi.
Yeah, with Trimagasi, we saw it as soon as Bharat gets into the story. We see it with him in the way that everyone, with the exception of Goring, interacts with him.
Yeah, and because they all just refer to him as the Black.
Right.
Like, oh, look, a Black is talking to us. Like, should we help the Black? It's like,
well, I think that's a translation thing, because in Spanish you would say el negro,
right,
which translates literally to the black, in the same way that we would say el blanco, which translates to the white. So it sounds awful versus the black guy or the black dude, which you probably shouldn't say either.
True enough.
Yeah.
But so when you're looking at this idea of you've got this woman. She's there's a lot of questions surrounding her, right? She's a mystery wrapped in an enigma, this whole thing. To me, I felt that she represented the unspoken, kind of downtrodden, people on the outskirts of society, the people that the middle to upper class would just as soon pretend don't even exist, because again, they make you come face to face with that there are struggles far worse than yours. I believe that she kind of is this archetype who represents the faceless poverty community that is in all big cities and just anywhere. There are people in poverty no matter where you live, but I think that she comes to represent that idea, and everybody looks down on her so much that the feeling I got was that that's who she's supposed to represent, is the people that it's like, you know what, man, life would be a lot easier if you weren't getting in my way and screwing stuff up all the time. And that's what she does. She's voiceless. She's damn near faceless, because most of the time it's covered in blood and just caked up, and we can just barely see her. And so, but she's constantly just wrecking other people's ideal way of getting by in order to achieve what she wants, which is not unreasonable. What she wants is her daughter back. But because people think that she's such a nuisance, it's a lot easier to believe that she's just crazy and doesn't actually have a daughter. And so it's easier to just play her off as that, instead of having to understand that she's facing a struggle that we can't understand because her daughter is in this hellhole, and she has to wake up every day knowing that on one of these levels her daughter may be dead, because there's no way a child is going to survive this. So she represents that idea of people who are going through things that we can't even imagine, and so it's just easier to kind of ignore them and pretend that they're not there. And whoo, sorry,
I might disagree with you.
Okay.
So I disagree with an asterisk.
Okay.
And the asterisk is because the message of this movie is so muddled and ill-defined, as I think we come to find later. I don't know if her character is as brilliant as what you're saying.
Okay.
Or is nothing more than a plot device.
Fair.
Because if she does stand for all those things that you just spoke about so eloquently, then that is a beautifully written character that I think not enough about that subplot was delivered.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. I very tightly contrived some of my ideas that I put in here.
And the beautiful thing about headcanon is that you're working off of stuff that's there,
right?
So that you can make it your own. So there is the possibility of that, because as soon as you started talking about her, I was like, I got this. I'm ready. I'm ready to discount him. And then I'm like, oh, you know what? It makes a little bit of sense. Because ultimately, for me, is it Miharu? Is that her name? Yeah, Miharu. Maybe she did go in as an actress who simply wanted to be the next Marilyn Monroe, and maybe she was raped there and birthed the child, and maybe that's why the administrator that came in said, well, she didn't have a child with her. Depends how long she's been there.
I was about to say though, man, but that kid was 8 or 9, man. That's a long time to survive in there.
So I don't really know exactly what's going on there, because there's like conflicting information, right? So there is a child, or was the child imagined by Goring, as he's dying? Does the actual story end on, level 333 and they die? And then everything else is just,
which
dream that he has before he dies.
There's credence to that because of the fact that the platform just like sinks into this blackness. Whereas if he actually died on 333, it would have stopped there because nobody's there. But I can see that as being part of the story. However, when we get to our next topic, I'll explain why I'm choosing to believe that the child was there.
So I do choose to believe that the child was there as well. So either what was her name again? Imagiri was lying, or Imagiri was misled, right? Because she's speaking as if it was a firsthand account, and maybe it wasn't, right? Maybe she's still buying into how perfect this facility can be at that point in the story. She hasn't become quite disillusioned enough yet. So if that's the case and the child does exist, then the sole purpose of I keep forgetting their names, Miharu. The sole purpose of Miharu is simply to get her child onto the platform and up to level 0.
Right.
And to me that's a plot device. And there's not enough is said about it.
Okay,
either explicitly or even implied, because you have to really, really search for that implication if that's the case. And I think that it's possible, but that's more than like one, even 2 steps in logic.
Oh yeah, no, like I said, I definitely took some steps here, but I really think, but I don't think it's that many steps because if like I said, if she's meant to represent people who kind of have these struggles and these troubles that are far beyond anything we could imagine, I mean, you're a father too, so that idea, and we talked about this, the lengths that you would go to protect, to return, to save your child. I don't know that it's that many steps removed to say that using that plot device of a missing child is a way to sell this idea of somebody who just has struggles that are far beyond what we could imagine.
Oh, and I get that. The other thing that kind of gets in the way of me believing that might be the case is, how the fuck did this child survive on level 333?
Yeah. That's where,
and I think that is a plot hole that the movie has. Like, there's no way that this child survived on that floor,
except the idea of the fact that when he moves down, when they come up with the idea to move down and distribute the food, they have only been on the levels that they are on for a very limited amount of time. That he's only known Bahrats for a few days when they come up with this plan. So it's possible that the child was formerly on a level where she was still getting some food and had just very recently been moved to 333. And that's how she still looked kind of healthy, because he had not been on level 6, but a day or two tops before they hatched this plan to ride the platform down and do whatever it took to distribute food evenly through the levels. So there's a reason. Now, granted, if she were on a higher one, you'd think that Miharu would have found her.
Yeah,
if she
or that she would have been
level,
killed for food.
Right, or that she would have been killed for food. But
or that Imagiri would have known about her.
There is a possibility that just the month before she was on a level where she was still receiving some food. And so that's how she was able to be alive on 333.
We also get, who was it? Was it Bharat? Who says that the child has a gift or something, you know,
right.
so then we start to get something supernatural going on there, which if that's the case, you know, introducing it, you know, bottom of the 9th, you know, bases loaded. It's like, I don't know if I buy this.
Yeah, it's like ultimate Deus Ex right there, right? It's like, no, this kid can't die.
So I think that's part of where the story goes astray there. I think if you have to pause and think, how's this happening? If we can have so much back and forth about this, and I don't think in the right way, right? It's not like we're sitting here discussing, you know, what was that golden shining thing in Pulp Fiction? You know, like that's an interesting conversation. Right. I think we're talking
unless
about,
you're having it with Quentin Tarantino, because he's like, it was fucking nothing. It was a light bulb in a suitcase. Move on.
But I think at this point, like we're talking about an integral part of the movie. It is one of the cogs in the machine that makes this thing work, or not. And it's a discussion that we've been having for a couple minutes now. Yeah, so I don't think that that's a good thing.
Right, and I do think that that's kind of what I fall back on when I use that analogy of the gymnastics routine that doesn't stick the landing. Right. I think that when we get down there and the child becomes the message, then suddenly we've lost what was a solid,
the previous message.
Yeah, like what was a solid gift of storytelling before that moment.
And this kind of leads us into our last area here, which is the message itself, right? So there is at least one message going on here.
At least
there's possibly an infinite number of messages, because I feel like I am either not smart enough to understand this movie or entirely too smart, and I don't think it's either. So how did you read this movie? Does the message of this movie, does it work? Does it not? Are there instances where it works? Nick, we'll go back to you.
All right, so this is the message I got from the movie, from start to finish, I guess, is that you have the administration on top, and the administration is presented in a way in which, you know, they act like they care about the people there because they ask them for their favorite food so that it can be added to the menu. And then they put all the stuff on the table perfectly and give everybody just enough food, and then leave it up.
Including tearing that dude a new one because his hair was in the pan.
Yeah. You get that.
Like, this food is going to a prison where people are literally going to piss on it at some point. But that
I don't know why they didn't get Gordon Ramsay to be to be the head chef there.
Yeah, so you get this perfect food.
Just a string of curse words flying down from level 0 all the time.
You get this
Where's
perfect
the goddamn lamb sauce, you fuck?
I'm a turd sandwich. And then it goes down to, you know, you get the higher level people who gorge themselves on this food and just absolutely destroy it, even up to level 48 where they first wake up where you have the Gorang falls into he's dancing around with Trimagasi, and they're like eating the food, and he's even like throwing up on the table.
Doing naked yoga.
Excellent scene. And then you get down, and it's almost like the people on the bottom are just like the forgotten people. They're the people that you don't want to have. And then once you get to the very bottom, the message I got from that with the child there is that our society is completely broken, from the administration giving us everything we need, in quotation marks. And then all the way down, and people just screw it away. The only way to fix that is children are our future, and we have to put them in a better place, send them to the top, invest in our children. That's the message I got out of the whole movie.
I like that idea of the children are our future aspect. I didn't look at that as much. I like that. So when I'm looking at the message here, there are two kind of takeaways for me in this. The first one being, this movie is, when we talked about the premise earlier, I held on to one that I had here. This movie is essentially a really elongated version of, have you ever heard of the humanitarian view of like using a pizza party to decide what kind of people you're dealing with? When you have a pizza party, you've got a couple of different types of people, but the standouts are the people who take one piece because they don't think that there's going to be enough pizza for everybody, and the people who take three pieces because they don't think that there's going to be enough pizza for everybody. Whereas in theory, if everybody just takes their two, there's enough for everybody, right? So this becomes that like tweet like turned into a movie, right? This idea of, we live in a world where there is enough food for everybody. And we just have to find a system to distribute it properly. Yes, that's extraordinarily idealistic, and I get that. But if you can't find some room in your life to live in that headspace, then going back to what Nick said, then that's when you've got to default to this idea of children being the future, which is why we look at, and I know that this was Spanish, and I don't know much about the Spanish political system, but if I were to draw lines here to the American political system, we're a country right now that's constantly held hostage by 50 old people. Just within the past couple of years, we weren't able to say 50 old white guys anymore. And that's like a new concept, right? Is this idea that is, as ideals come through, we're constantly fighting these older people who are just trying to maintain the status quo because, they're on levels 1 and 2. They're eating as much as they want and don't matter how much it gets down there. So you've got that, right? Which is, can easily be looked at as like I said earlier, just kind of the scathing review of capitalism and how it works, and the idea of trickle down not working, because at no point did this food trickle all the way down to level 333
Not even close.
But again, what did it take? It took men with weapons like to do it. And this is why I'm super liberal. I'm liberal enough that I don't even I'm a leftist, I even shit on liberal ideals a lot of the time, but I'm like, yes, arm the people. For the love of God, arm the people. Do we need gun reform? Yes. But should we take them away? No. Hell yes, arm the people, right? Because that's what it's going to take to make shit happen when what you're fighting against is an authoritarian system. And so while they weren't actually arming themselves against the administration and the authoritarian system, they were arming themselves against people who were brainwashed into the only way to survive is what is presented to them by this authoritarian system. So that's one that I get. I think that the other message here, and the one that's quite literally referred to as the message, and that would be the child that they find on 333. Now, assuming that the child that they find on 333 is actually there, then the message here is that this, and when you also add to this the fact that Imaguri was so convinced that there were no kids there, but we eventually see one that is, what we're presented with is this idea that the system is far beyond broken. It's broken to the nth degree. But you are also presented with this idea that even people at the top, level 0 people, we can only assume at this point are completely ignorant to how broken the system is. So the reason that the child becomes the message is because if you can get her on the platform and you can make the people on level 0 who aren't faceless, we know them, we see them, they are chefs and people who are just doing their job of creating top quality food. If you can start to dismantle the system at the top, by making people see how broken it is. Like, look, the administration, these people who set all the rules, everything that we're supposed to live by, that we trust with our lives to the point that we would walk into this facility willingly because they've told us that it's going to help us. They don't even follow their own rules. And if it's a rule as simple as we don't put children under the age, was 16 or 18 16. Was the age? 16. Yeah, under the age of 16 through hell and make them survive in a situation like this. If they're willing to break something that should be as simple to maintain as that, then what are they doing that we can't even imagine to make sure that they don't lose power and that that the systems that they want in place are never broken. Baharat says something along the lines of, Goring says, that we're fighting against a machine. All machines have gears. And Baharat says something along the lines of, this isn't a machine, these are people. But when you're looking at a political ideology running something, that is a machine. And the people just become the cogs. So what you have to do is get smaller cogs to realize that they can disrupt the system just as much as a big one can. Dave, you're a big watch guy. If a big part fails, if a small part fails, the watch still stops working, correct?
Yeah, one grain of sand in one gear, right. It's done.
And so the message being, if we can convince the people at the top of where we are, that even the people above them who have convinced them that everything they're doing is lavish, that they don't even follow their own rules, then we can disrupt that system. And so it may be something as simple as, like Nick put it, the kids being the future. If that's what it takes, but you've got to find a way to shove the awfulness of not following your own rules in order to maintain the machinations of your system. You've got to make people realize. And so that was what I got from the actual kind of, what they referred to as the message in the movie.
I think this is where the movie really kind of gets lost.
Yeah, I fought hard for that one.
Yeah, and here's the thing: like, I don't think you're wrong. But you know what? Before I get started, friend of the show, former guest as well, Andy Chacon. How you doing, bud? Says, sounds very Orwellian. On what platform can I watch? The platform. Lovely pun. You can watch this on Netflix.
It is on Netflix. Yep.
Yeah.
Exclusively, I believe.
I believe so. Yeah, I think they have the distribution rights. So I think I don't disagree with anything you said, and I don't disagree with anything that that Nick said either. But I also think that it's not clear enough for me.
Fair. And it's a fine line. We've talked about that you tread before between spoon feeding, but also giving enough information that you can draw without feeling. Like I said, I definitely know I'm reaching with some of this stuff because I did have to draw pretty deeply. So that's a fair assessment.
And I think that it's unfortunate because I think it's just that the movie's overstuffed with messaging, because if the creative team had stuck with one thing, a scathing condemnation of capitalism, or of the justice system or of classism or of how the older generations are leaving nothing for the younger generation. I mean, any one of those things can be explored to from platform 0 all the way to platform 33, and you can get a great movie out of that, because I think that for the majority of that movie, we do get that. We do get a focus primarily on the human condition as it pertains to, I think more than anything, capitalism. And yeah, there's a little bit of classism thrown in there, and there's a little bit of the justice system thrown in there, but it's kind of like just on the outskirts. Once everything changes to the child, I think that was like the, when you play Jenga and and you try to remove a piece and you're like, oh, that was a real close call, right? and then like if you find another one here and you're like, okay, I'm gonna try to just like push that one through and everything's okay, right? But then there's that one final piece where like as soon as you touch it, you're like, I done fucked up,
right? But I touched it, and I
painted
myself
into follow
this corner.
through, and as soon as you remove that thing, the whole fucking tower comes crashing down. And I think that that's what the child ends up doing here. Because I mean, I don't even see a real conclusion to the movie either, because Goring just gets off of the platform and there's no follow through with the message. So
it just doesn't end.
You're just not, you're not even going to make sure that the kid makes it to the top.
And then how fast is that platform moving when it stops at floor 0?
Oh, she's gonna slam into the
exactly. We talked about the physics of this. That thing flies up. The physics, an object in motion stays in motion, right? That platform stops. That girl ain't.
Yeah, until otherwise acted upon by an outside force. You know what that outside force is? The ceiling of platform 0. All right.
It was all
man, we didn't even think about the fact that we just splattered the message on the top of the
Yeah, man. Someone's gonna walk in, some poor fuck is gonna walk into that room and they're gonna look up at the top and they're gonna say, oh, I don't remember putting raspberry custard on this one.
Apparently it wasn't a hit. Who made the raspberry custard? Nobody ate it.
Fuck. And Gordon Ramsay comes back in. He's ripping some guy. He's like, I swear I didn't make it.
There is an interesting thing about the protest that they do when they're moving down that I noticed in the movie. It's when they're going down and Balrog is just being brutal to everybody and yelling at them, stay back, motherfucker. He gets his Samuel L. Jackson moment there. And Goring kind of looks at him like, all right, that's a little more extreme than I wanted it to be. And then when they get down to the wise man who's like, you need a message, and then they're going to start this peaceful protest. And it literally, that peaceful protest ends on the very next level. It starts and that girl's like, who are you to say I can't eat? I've been on whatever floor and now I'm on this one. I'm going to gorge myself. And then whack.
Yeah. Well,
head split open.
And there's an interesting way to kind of look at that. Now, like I said, I'm not pro killing people, right? But I'm not anti-violence.
That's comforting to know.
Yeah. Hey. You know what, though? Possibly not an unnecessary disclaimer, considering the joy that we take out of this podcast every week, right?
Nazis are the exception. We have talked about this. Correct. Okay to kill a Nazi.
Yes,
always.
However, I'm not anti-violence. Violence has its place, and that's a really interesting and thin wire to tread on. Like, Nick knows this. I'm very pro riot. I'm extraordinarily pro riot, because I do believe that violence doesn't always start when somebody throws a punch or fires a bullet. That there are times when words and actions are considered violent it is necessary to respond with violence, and there are times when escalation becomes the only way of, saving your life. But like I said, that's a message for a whole different thing. But you're right, it's this very interesting thing, because the guy says to them, "You've got to deliver a message," and then they immediately start delivering that message with metal pieces of a bed frame to the back of people's heads when they won't listen. But again,
what was it Dr. King said? Riots are the voice of the unheard.
The voice of the unheard, absolutely. Yeah. And if you're not familiar with what Dave is saying, Dr. King goes far beyond the "I have a dream" speech. Read his letters from a Birmingham jail. And just for some social context to what Dave is saying there, it will, sidebar here, it will completely make you understand how whitewashed the history that we teach of Martin Luther King Jr. is when you read letters from a Birmingham jail. So they've got this idea, but it immediately goes too far, right? And that's so often what happens when you place action in the hands of idealists, not, a realist or a functionalist, if that's even a word, right? Mm-hmm. When you're armed with nothing but a metal bar and an idea, then anything, or here, let me, when you're armed, when all you've got is a hammer and an idea, that anything that opposes your idea looks like a nail. Right, to cross some metaphors here. Mm-hmm. And so when we're looking at the characters of Goring and Baharat, what we have here are two idealists. In all his time that Goring has spent there, he's still being very intellectual about the fact that he can make this idea work. You've got Baharat, whose idea is the fact that this can be survived. He was convinced he was going to climb out. That's why that's why his thing was a rope.
And he was trusting enough in the person above.
Yes, which led to him getting shit on. Literally.
Don't trust the guy above you.
Yeah, never. Look.
It's over, Anakin. I have the high ground.
There we go. If Star Wars and the platform have taught us anything, don't trust the people above you. No. From your boss to your state politicians to the goddamn president, they're all pieces of shit.
They're probably going to piss on you or shit on you.
And they live to shit on you. Exactly. And so it's, so it becomes this very tedious marriage of arming the people with the ideals.
Yeah. There's messages here.
Right,
and
exactly.
And they are numerous and they are good. But I don't know that they jive.
Right.
To me, it seems like they went to the Lego store and bought a bunch of Legos and forgot to buy the instruction manual and thought of themselves as master builders and tried to put this thing together. And instead of having a beautiful spaceship, right, or a castle, or they ended up with this like weird science project that clearly you did not have your parents help you on. You know how? Okay, so Daniel, you teach elementary school. There are projects. There are projects that you get.
I get that analogy so well.
There are projects that you get where you're like, your parents helped you with this, and then there's projects that you get and you're like, you did this yourself, didn't you, bud? Right? And that's what this was. To me, it was like, they tried to fit a couple Lego pieces together, and they got 3 out of the 4 wheels. They used like a 2x2 piece for the 4th wheel, and does it roll? Yes. Is it fancy? No. And will I drive it? No, but it's there, and
right.
and it kind of looks like a car.
Right. Well, and there's some weight to be carried in the fact that I know you did this on your own.
Right. Well, exactly.
I'm going to give you some credit for attempting this.
Right.
The director did say in the interview that I read that he got the script, he thought it was great. He immediately saw that there had to be a bunch of rewriting to turn it into a movie. Mm-hmm. And he worked on it with, I think, 2 more writers. two more screenwriters, and they fought over it for 2 years over their views. One guy didn't want to budge on his view. The other guy didn't want to budge on his view. And they almost shelved the project multiple times because nobody was willing to budge on anything that they wanted to put in the movie.
Just kind of puts things into perspective.
Yeah, there we go. Exactly.
Yeah. So you have two very different ideas of what this movie is coming together, and they're just like, fuck it, I guess we'll make it.
Right. Exactly.
Well, we'll try to put it all in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I love beer. I love ice cream, but maybe at the same time, they're not always the best idea, right? Like that type of thing.
You never had a PBR float, dude?
Dude, I have. You're right. Ice cream and beer, too. That was a bad idea. It's been a long time, but I have had an ice cream float, and it was not terrible. All right. So, damn it, now I want an ice cream float. All right. So, but with beer. So, we've reached that point in the show where it's time that we kind of put a bow on this, by deciding what our rating's going to be. Now, if you're new to the show or you just need a quick reminder, we do only rate a movie against itself. And in order to do that, what we do is we create a unique sorry, I almost said message system. My brain was a step ahead of me. A unique rating system for each movie. And for this particular movie, we spent a lot of time discussing the concept that was presented to us by the fact that the child was the message. But before the child was the message was just supposed to be the fact that these people could come together and they would not eat something as delicious as the panna cotta that was placed on the platform, and it was left untouched until level 333 because the panna cotta was supposed to be the message. However, the message, much like the panna cotta, was eaten by a child, and we don't actually know if it was ever delivered. But out of a possible 5 untouched panna cottas, Nick, what do you give the platform?
All right, so on my drive home from work this morning, I was like, I know what I'm going to give this movie. I thought about it a lot as we were talking about it, and I think I'm going to give it 4 untouched panna cottas and then a half unperfect panna cotta that's just been eaten by a child.
That's a good point. You can't have half an untouched panna cotta. That was genius, Nick. Check. Yeah. You're welcome back.
Nice.
Okay.
Nicely done.
All right. So we're going 4.5 from Nick. What about you, Dave?
I think I'm gonna go 3.5. 3.5 untouched panna cottas. Because it is well made. I think that there's a lot to like here, and I think that if you can get past the plot hole that we discussed with the child and the mixed messaging that's here, there's a lot to like, and I think that this is a movie that I would put on but I might recommend to a couple people. I can think of a couple people already that I'd be like, hey, you know what, you might like this movie. I don't think it's quite at 4 untouched panna cottas, but I don't think it's quite as low as 3, because it's not just I'd suggest it. It's I suggested it and I kind of liked it, and eating watermelon naked in a kid's inflatable pool. I mean, that's the dream, isn't it?
Yeah, you know what? I'll tell you what. During summer, naked watermelon in a kiddie pool. That's the dream.
Give it to 2 starving naked men, and it gets even better.
Yeah. And now, fuck if I don't want a Samurai Plus.
Right.
I do feel like I kind of need a Samurai Plus in my life.
Yeah. It was definitely a very good knife. And also apparently if you killed anyone, you got to keep their object, because Miharu kept the Samurai Plus, and she kept the remains of the dog that she killed at one point. Like, she made like a little backpack out of sheets. So apparently it's also like the Highlander, and the fact that if you take anybody out, like, their shit is your shit now. So like, she was also very slowly like gathering people's stuff.
Well, that's kind of the way it works, isn't it? Like, if I go to your house and I kick you out of your house. Your house is mine.
Yeah, true enough. That's
And
how
it's
it
Grand
works.
Theft Auto rules, man.
Yeah, worst roommate ever. Also, apparently, very real rules in some states. So, I think I'm going to end up kind of splitting the difference between the two of you. I think that there's a serious drop off at the end here, even as much as I can draw from what they gave me as an ending in my idea of sending this child to the top to make people see how broken the system is. I think the fact that it took me so long to reach that point is I think that the onus of it taking me a long time. Let me play my Trimagasi card. That's their fault. Right. Like they could have done something that would have made it easier for me to get to that point if that's the message that they wanted me to receive. I think that what we kind of got here, I liked the Lego theory a lot. I think that we got a lot of great ideas that with a lot of time and effort this afternoon, I was able to build this archetypal argument for the characters, but it was a lot of work, right? That I had to put into it. And so, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, sometimes the best books are the ones that then make you read other stuff, but that's a literary concept, you know, like when you watch a movie and then you've got to like read stuff, you kind of start to lose some clout with that. But so I do think I'm going to sit firmly at the 4. I think that we got some great special effects, like we talked about at the top. The one where they're coming down on the platform, we see that person that committed suicide by just laying down under the platform. So we're just left with half of their body. I think that we get some great visual gags with the special effects. I think that we got some amazing visual gags with just the quick glimpses of what people chose to bring with them, because she rails. Yeah, the one dude had a surfboard, exactly. Like she just won't quit writing, Gorgon, about the fact that he brought a book. Like what? I think exactly what she says. What sort of person brings a fucking book here?
Well, he got to eat it.
Yeah, exactly. But he made more use.
He ate his words.
He made more use of it than the guy who brought a surfboard, right?
Oh, yeah.
And all of this coming from a woman who brought a dog. And so I think that we got some great visual gags. There was the one dude that just had a bed full of money. Like, I guess his idea was that he may have been able to buy his way up to higher levels or throw money up to people and make sure they left him food. If he kind of knew how it worked in there. But we got some great little bits like that kept you interested through what were slower parts of the movie. But I do think that ultimately there's a loss of an untouched panna cotta here due to the fact that that the messages did become very muddled. And while I can make some sense of the girl getting on the platform and going back to the top, I can't begin to make sense of why at the end the platform just lowered into a blackness of nothing. And I tried. Look, Cthulhu helped me. I tried, right? Like I was like, here's the symbolism of that, but I just couldn't make it work, because if that was him dying, it doesn't make sense for the girl to still be on the table. Like at that point, like there are a lot of like little inconsistencies there. So I'm gonna hit this solidly at a 4 untouched panna cottas, which the quick math on that, actually, since I split the difference between you, is now 4. Between the 3 of us. As a podcast, we are going to give the platform an even 4 untouched panna cottas. So, I mean, it's a solid movie. There's a lot here to watch. It does have a decent amount of rewatch value, and I think we can all feel like we all would all say we'd recommend this to somebody.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with this one. So, so there you have it. 4 untouched panna cottas for Spain's The Platform. And you can find this again on Netflix, and have yourself an enjoyable little time. I hope you watched it before you watched us or listened to us, because otherwise we just spoiled everything.
That's what we tried to do.
Yeah,
still worth watching, I think.
I'd say so. There's some pretty compelling stuff in here.
Maybe try to find your own message that you
exactly. And when you do, send us an email at shiverpod@gmail.com and let us know what your message that you
listen here, you dumb fucks. You totally missed this thing.
Yeah. We'll love it. We'll talk about it on air.
Yeah. So if you enjoyed this show, you can tune in to any one of the other Geek Bro Network shows, because I'm sure you're bound to like those shows like What's Up Bro, shows like Better Let Me Tell You, shows like Mount Geekmore, Comedy Fitness, A Dose of Ellie, Kick Flicks, Crimacopia. I think that's...
Did you say Seasons?
Seasons, a TV podcast.
I watched a couple episodes of Superstore the other day because I knew they did it on there. Show's pretty good so far. It comes out of the box swinging. I'll give Superstore credit.
Ah, nice. Didn't watch it.
Yeah, it's like I'm constantly insert like what I'm actually like full time watching right now is I'm watching Justified, but I can't watch that while my kids are around. So I was trying to find something I could watch when the kids are awake because it's summer and they're always here.
Yeah,
I can't get rid of them.
Yeah, I reached that point. Was it last summer or the summer before? Maybe it was the summer before. Yeah, it was in the middle of quarantine. Doom Eternal came out, and I was like, I really want to play this, and my kid is just sitting next to me, and I'm like, fuck it, man, you're gonna learn today. And he's like, what's that thing? I'm like, that you find out here, fucking kill it with a chainsaw. And I just handed him the controller, and now he's a Doom Slayer.
And of course, if you did like this and you're not following us on all social media, you can find us everywhere at ShiverPod. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. Our Twitter following is not big, but our Instagram one continues to grow every day. That's where we're doing most of our fan interaction. And speaking of fan interaction, this wraps up our month of movies that are new to both of us. And what we are going to be starting next week is Fan Fest Summer. If you enjoy the show and you've always wanted to be on an episode, or there's a movie that you think we should do that we haven't yet, we're going to give you an opportunity to do both of those things. We're going to give you a chance to pick the movie that we watch and to be on the episode and discuss it with us. We've got a couple that are planned out already. Nick, you did an awesome job here on this one today. Nick's going to be back to do one with us at some point this summer. Next week, I believe we're going to be doing Jeepers Creepers with Ish, long-time friend of the show, which I believe he's been on twice, which I think maybe tied with Andy. I think Ish and Andy we've had on twice. So Ish is going to claim the crown of most frequent guests next week when we do Jeepers Creepers. We've got it in the works to do Evil Dead 2, not exactly sure on the date. So if you are interested in being on the show and suggesting a movie that we do and doing it with us, you can email us at shiverpod@gmail.com, or you can just DM us on Instagram. I check those every day. Let us know what movie that you want us to watch. Let us know when you want to be on it. You know what time to record because you're watching and listening. But if you're listening and don't know when we're actually recording, it is Wednesdays at 9/8 Central. We'll have you on. All you need is a webcam, a microphone, and a hard-on for whatever movie you've decided that we should watch. And we're going to have some fun with Summer Fan Fest.
You could also really hate the movie.
There is that
valid
option point.
Yeah.
We've yet to have somebody suggest one and be like, this movie is such garbage that we should absolutely talk about it. And that would be a fascinating take.
I think the one I suggested almost scarred me for life. So
yes. Love it. I cannot wait. I've rewatched that movie within the past year because I rewatched it to get ready before I watched the remake. So I'm excited to do it again.
I have not seen it since.
Oh shit. Are you serious? You haven't seen it since?
Yes.
That is going to be such a good one. So anyway, we've got some ideas in the pike already, but if you've got one, find a way to contact us. I check all our social media every day. You have to excuse me if the Instagram posts are getting weird about the times right now. School's out, and so my schedule's off. I have to reestablish what my summer schedule is. I promise the multi-day postings will be back by the end of the week.
Dude, you don't have to promise anything.
Yeah, you're right. Fuck you.
You don't know the people anything.
They're
on platform 333, man.
And I can see that nobody's actually watching right now. It's just the three of us.
Yeah. I think Kowalski was the only guy watching at the end here, and
he was
he's like, all right, yeah, these guys are done
at the end.
Yeah, they're just vamping. So,
but before we go, Nick, do you have anything going on that you want to tell people about?
I actually started learning how to do game dev, and I'm thinking about starting a YouTube channel to show my GD journey into the world of game dev. Yeah, I've been doing 3D models in Blender, learning how to code in C#, using the Unity engine, stuff like that. So hopefully that works out.
And
do you have a channel name already that people can?
I do have a channel name already. It is Ultra Art. It is UHLTRAART.
There you go.
Okay, and for anybody who may be listening that doesn't know Nick personally, this is a dude that lives and breathes all forms of gaming. This is a guy who owns game boards. This is a guy who's been to conventions specifically for tabletop gaming, and not just like tabletop RPG gaming. He plays it all: tabletop card games, tabletop board games, RPGs. I have personally played some games that he's created before. There was that space RPG that we played with Mikey and Lindley. There was what was it? Fire Strike was the other one.
Yeah, Fire Teams. Yeah,
Fire Team. I mean, this is a guy who has created games just for his friends before, so he is excellent at what he does, and that would definitely be worth checking out.
Nice. Definitely will be checking that out.
Hopefully I get something for you soon.
Yeah, nice. So, on behalf of all of us here on Shiver, fright you very much.